Hello class and welcome to lesson 3. This is equivalent ratios. And our objective today is I can find equivalent ratios by using a multiplication table. And we have a vocab word today which is equivalent ratios, which is important to know since that is what our lesson is about, right? So ratios that name the same comparison. So remember, ratios are just a comparison between two numbers. And equivalent ratios are just ratios that have similar comparisons. So we can look at equivalent is like equal, equivalent, equal. So for example, if we had a ratio of 1 to 2, 3 different ways to write it. An equivalent ratio could be 2 to 4. It could also be 3 to 6. And it can also be 17 to 34. These are all equivalent ratios of the ratio 1 to 2. Now let's jump into unlock the problem. So we need to use a multiplication table to find two equivalent ratios. So I'm going to start by drawing a table with 3 to 4 columns. And in this first row, I'm going to put our ratios. So it's 4 over 7. So I need to find equivalent ratios. So to make something equal, if we're looking at a fraction here, 4 to 7, then whatever you do to the top, you have to do to the bottom to make them equal. 4 over 7 would be the 1 in our multiplication chart, our multiplication table. And the second row would be 2, 3, and 4. So now what do I multiply by 4? When I multiply 4 by 2, I get 8. When I multiply 4 by 3, I do not get 9. I get 12. And then 4 times 14. Oh. And then 4 times 4 is 16. So what's another word for numbers that you multiply? What's another name for these numbers? They're multiples of 4. So you multiply a number by these to get these numbers. So you multiply 4 by 2 to get 8. So 8 is a multiple of 4. So now what I do at the top, I have to do the bottom. So if we're continuing our multiplication chart, 7 times 1 is 7. 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times 3 is 21. And 7 times 4 is 28. So it's asking me to find two equivalent ratios. So four to 7 is equal to 8 to 14. And it's also equivalent to 16 over 28. And those will be our final answers. All right, let's see our steps. All right, so step 1 is to draw a 2 by 3 table. So here's our table. And we need 2 rows and 3 columns, or you can do 4 also. So this is our first row, this is our second row. This will be our first column. This would be our second column. This would be our third column. And we could even, let's add a fourth. And let's even change this to 2 by 4. All right. Step 2 is to fill in the first column with the given numbers. So let's redraw our table. Well, actually, let's look at our example, which let's do 4 over 5. So if we have this table, so I need to fill in the first column with the given numbers. So the first column, remember the column is the up and down because the L is long. So it's like you can see it's an arrow. So the first column needs to have the given numbers, and our given numbers are 4 and 5. Step 3 is to fill in the rest of the table with the multiples of the given numbers. Step 3 is to fill in the rest of the table with the multiples of the given numbers. So let's do that. So if we're looking at the multiples, then when you multiply 4 by 1 and 5, you get
4 and 1. When you multiply, next will be 2, 3, and 4. So when I multiply 4 by 1, I get 4, and 5 by 1, I get 5. Now I need to multiply 4 by 2, which would give us 8, and 5 by 2, which is 10. Next would be 4 by 3, which is 12, 5 by 3, which is 15, and then 4 times 4 is 16, and finally 5 by 4 is 20.
So these are the multiples. So let's highlight the multiples. Multiples of the given numbers. These are the multiples. And let's go back in and add green for given numbers. These are given numbers. All right, so step 4 is to write your new ratio or ratios with the multiples. So what makes sense is 8 and 10 because like 4 and 5, they're one over another. You multiply 4 by 2 to get 8 and you multiply 5 by 2 to get 10. What does not make sense is if we did 12 and 20. Because 12, 4 times 3 is 12. 5 times 4 is 20, so those would not be equivalent. But what would work is 16 over 20. Because you multiply 4 by 4 to get 16 and 4 by, not 4, 5 by 4. So here our given numbers are 4 and 5. And then the multiples are 4 and 4. Okay. So for example 1, we need to use a multiplication chart to find two ratios. Not just two ratios, two equivalent ratios. So let's add that. And step 1 is to create a table. And then we need to fill in our given ratios, which are 5 and 2. And now we need to fill these with their multiples. So if this is 1, this is 2, 3, 4. 5 times 2 is 10. 2 times 2 is 4. 5 times 3 is 15. 2 times 3 is 6. 5 times 4 is 20. And 2 times 4 is 8. And now all of these can be used as equivalent ratios because they're all equal to the original ratio. So now I can just pick which one I want to do. So 10 over 4 works, and so does 15 over 6. Example 2, it's the same directions. Use a multiplication chart to find two equivalent ratios. So we're working with 2 and 10. So let's start by making our table and filling in our given numbers. So we can multiply 2 by 2 and get 4. 2 by 10 is 20. 2 times 3 is 6. 10 times 3 is 30. And 2 by 4 is 8. And 10 times 4 is 40. But on this one, let's look at our given numbers, 2 and 10. Can these two numbers be broken down to get an equivalent ratio? Is there something we can divide by 2? Is there something we can divide by 2 and 10? Yes. 10 can only be divided by 5 and 2. So can 2 be divided by 5? No. But 2 can be divided by 2. So if we divide 2 by 2 and 10 by 2, we would get 1 over 5. So one of our equivalent ratios could be 6 and 30. But another equivalent ratio could be 1 and 5, because it is equal to 2 over 10. All right, last example. So we need to determine whether the ratios are equivalent. So we're given the two ratios. First ratio is 2 to 3, and our last ratio is 8 to 12. So what we need to do is compare these two. So can you multiply, since we're going bigger, right? We're going from 2 to 8, so we're getting a bigger number. So can we multiply anything by 2 to get 8? Yes, we can multiply 2 by 4 to get 8. But remember, what you do to the top, you have to do to the bottom. So if we multiplied 4 by 3 by 4, would we get 12? Yes, we would. So the answer would be yes, because you can multiply 2 by 4 to get 8, and you can multiply 3 by 4 to get 12. So these two are equivalent. All right, that is it for this lesson. I'll see you at your designated meeting time.